Remember this damn thing from Battlefield 5? Well, how about 9 of them per team? Welcome to today's video, where we're going to be talking about Battlefield 2042's transport vehicle problem. This is a problem that has already kind of cropped up and people have already caught on about with the Hovercraft, but is only going to get worse once people start unlocking the M5C Bolte. Believe me, if you think the Hovercraft is bad now, just wait until people start getting this thing. Anyways, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. The baseline problem is that the transport vehicles in Battlefield 2042 are in far too much of an abundance and far too powerful for how much of an abundance of them there are. And to cut straight to the chase and avoid all the BS, the problem here is there is literally zero reason to pick the Jeep. And the Jeep is, surprise, surprise, the most balanced of all the transport vehicles. We already see this in the game right now. Ask yourself how often you see a Jeep versus a Hovercraft, and later on in the game, how often you see a Jeep or a Hovercraft versus the Bolt once people start unlocking it. The answers are going to be quite simple. When given 3 options and one is just objectively better than the other 2, people are basically always going to pick that one. Now, admittedly, there are situations where you would want to call something else down since it has more seats. The Bolt only has 2 seats, so if you have a full squad and you want to pick them up, you'll probably call a Hovercraft. That has 4. But why would you ever call in a Jeep over a Hovercraft? The Jeep takes less damage to destroy and doesn't have any windows to protect you from explosives. So odds are you either get blown up out of it by splash damage, blown up as it is because it can't take that much damage, or shot out of it by someone with a gun. Either way, the Jeep isn't very good, and that's fine. It kind of shouldn't be. It's a glass cannon. It's a transport vehicle, and one that you can get 9 of on certain maps. But at the end of the day, you're never going to pick the Jeep, because you're always going to pick the Hovercraft, because the Hovercraft doesn't take any damage from small arms like miniguns, you can't get blown up out of it by splash damage, and it can take 3 rockets or 2 C4. Yeah, 3 rockets. The problem runs deeper than this though. It isn't as simple as, wow, this one transport vehicle is just better than all the rest. No, some other problems definitely exist here, and they're things that you might not even think of. And the first and probably most obvious is that having all these transport vehicles being as powerful as they are basically removes infantry combat from the game. Being an infantry in 2042 is probably the worst it's ever been. And that's saying something because Battlefield 4 existed, where you'd get shredded by top players in helicopters all the time. But now, you don't just have to worry about helicopters. You have to worry about 3 enemy armored vehicles and 9 effective light tanks driving around. 2042's capture point system doesn't have too many capture points that you just straight up can't get a vehicle to. I would say most of the maps have roughly half the points, if not more, that you can capture with vehicles. On those points, there's nothing but vehicles most of the time. If you show up with infantry, you're just asking to get farmed by some guy in a tank, some guy in a helicopter, or some guy in a transport vehicle. Your options of actually destroying those, of course, being severely limited. And even if you do destroy them, there's still 8 left roaming around on the map. Soldiers spawn with 3 rockets as it is, so you could 1v1 that one Hovercraft if it doesn't kill you and you get 3 rockets off. But then another one shows up in its place. Now you're out of rockets. What do you do then? The baseline issue here, playing infantry makes no sense because you could just call in a transport vehicle and use that. As I said, it's basically a light tank. We're not done yet though. Once again, it doesn't stop there. More problems persist if you want to play infantry, because at the end of the day, playing infantry in Battlefield is part of the experience. They don't call it Vehicle Field 2042. There are plenty of people who will sit in vehicles every single game, all game, but a whole lot of people, myself included, don't want to sit in vehicles all game and actually want to play infantry every once in a while. And this is where we get to the problem of moving from point to point with transport vehicles. If you've captured a point and you need to travel very far to get to the next point, odds are you're going to want to call in a transport. That's why the system is there. But since transport vehicles are so powerful, what do you choose to get there? Assuming you're at level 50, you've got 3 options: the Jeep, the Hovercraft, or the Bolt. Now, the Bolt is the most powerful of all of these vehicles, so the logical solution here is to call in the Bolt. But then you've got a super powerful light tank on your hands. So what do you actually do when you get to the point? You've got two options. You either get out of the Bolt and risk someone else getting into it, and then the enemy team has it, and then they kill you with it, or, surprise, surprise, you use it. And herein lies the problem. Just getting from point to point with the transport vehicles ends up with you being in a transport vehicle. And once you're in the transport vehicle, here we go again. No more infantry, you're in the transport vehicle for the rest of the time. I've tried to circumvent this myself by running a default Jeep and using that to get between points. But I shouldn't really have to nerf my Jeep and myself in order to get from point to point and not end up using a transport vehicle. It just doesn't make sense for that to be the way it is. And I know that these are questions that people probably aren't really worried about this early in the game's life cycle. But I can assure you, as time goes on, you're going to see more and more and more people using the transport vehicles, and soon enough, there's going to be 9 M5C Bolts running around the battlefield gunning everything down. Speaking of the Bolt, holy crap, what were they thinking with this thing? I don't think I need to talk about the Hovercraft because just about everyone who's played the game at this point knows all the problems with the Hovercraft. And as I said earlier, I would get to talking about the Bolt, and here we are. In case you haven't noticed from the background gameplay, this was just a game where I called the bolts in on a flag, like I said earlier, expecting to use it to get to the next flag. A random jumped in, and we killed a shit ton of people. The M5C Bolt is an attack helicopter on treads. And when I say that, I'm not joking even a little bit. As in, it quite literally has the attack chopper's gunner weapon on the top of it. I don't think you need to be told that the attack chopper's gunner is one of the strongest things in Battlefield across all the Battlefield games, and 2042 is included in that. The attack chopper's gunner cannon is always good. And it's really good here. And it turns out that when you put the attack chopper cannon on a really fast transport vehicle that can take 3 rockets before it dies, yeah, we've got a recipe for disaster. And then that recipe for disaster increases tenfold when there can be 9 of them on the map. 9 of them, I cannot get over that. Give or take 3 or 4 weeks before you see 9 M5C Bolts running around gunning down whoever's left playing infantry by that point in the game, because it probably won't be very many people anymore. Now the question comes down to, what do we do about this? Well, the real answer is we don't do anything. We just hope that DICE does do something. And whether DICE does do something, well, I can't say for sure if it'll happen, but I can cross my fingers and hope. I think the main thing here is that the M5C Bolt and the Hovercraft are anything but default transport vehicles, and putting them in the same class and category as the Jeep is absolutely ludicrous. Those 3 vehicles are not on the same plane of existence. The Hovercraft and the M5C are far better than the Jeep, and it's not even close. The Hovercraft and the M5C are on a little bit more level playing field, considering that you can have more people in the Hovercraft, but the M5C is more powerful. So I think what it comes down to is splitting the categories of vehicles and having the transport vehicles and Jeeps differing from the M5C and the Hovercraft. I don't necessarily think that the M5C and the Hovercraft should go into the tank category. The M5C, I think maybe you could make the argument for, the Hovercraft less so. But even if that were to happen, it would sure as hell be better than the current system. Whatever it is that's done, something needs to be done. Because as it stands right now, practically every objective has a Hovercraft on it. They're running around gunning down at least 12 to 15 people before they get destroyed, usually even more, and you can have a ridiculous number of them on every single map. I've heard plenty of things about nerfing the HP and whatnot on these vehicles, and I think for the M5C, I don't even know if that would be a good solution. It can go so fast and kill so many people that I really don't think it's a question of nerfing the health, and more of a question of reducing the amount you see. Because once you start seeing these things everywhere, like I said, you're going to see them everywhere. Whatever though, there's nothing I can do. All I'm here for is to complain about stuff that I can't change. And hope that one day I'll be able to pick infantry and move between the points of the transport vehicle and not have that sinking suspicion in the back of my mind that I know if I don't use this transport vehicle, someone's gonna use it against me. With that though, I'm done. Let me know what you think of the transport vehicle problem in 2042, and if you even think there is a transport vehicle problem in 2042. For all I know, people love the fact that you can get in a hovercraft and gun down a bunch of people trying to play the game as an infantry player. I really wouldn't know. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like, subscribe. If you didn't, don't do those things. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.